Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish Podcast. I'm Rebecca Biblioteca, and I am joined today by two guests who are going to be joining me in a conversation about a topic that I have wanted to discuss here on Mormonish probably since the very beginning because it is so relevant to all of us as post-Mormons, nuance Mormons, maybe especially Mormons that live in Utah. This is going to be really interesting. So I have Dan Barker, who is the co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, here with us. This is quite an honor. And I also have Doug Hendricks, who I think a lot of you are familiar with. Yeah. And he is the president of the Salt Lake City chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. So I'm just going to have you guys introduce yourselves. And then as we get into those introductions, also your organization, because I think a lot of our viewers right now will be going, oh, yeah, I've heard of them, but they may not necessarily really understand what you guys do, what your mission is. So let's just begin by introductions and an introduction into your organization. So let's start with Dan. We're so, like I said, so honored to have you here on the podcast.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to be out there in a few weeks with meeting with the chapter.
Wow.
It's a relatively new chapter. And it's not my first visit to Utah or Salt Lake City. In fact, I was at the temple a few years ago with Steve Benson. You probably remember Steve Benson.
I remember Steve, yes. Oh, my goodness.
Sadly, he just died this year.
Yeah.
He was just a brilliant, and he and I were really good buddies.
Oh.
His grandfather was Ezra Taft Benson, the former president of the Mormon Church. And I think for 25 years he really was my best buddy. We did a show together called Tunes and Tunes, where we combined my musical tunes with his cartoons.
Oh my goodness!
And it was really
tunes
fun
and
show.
Tunes.
And unfortunately, his editor at the Arizona Republic would not allow us to videotape the shows that we did. We did a bunch of shows, and in fact we did one in Salt Lake City during the very first Exmo conference. I think it was 2002 or 2003.
Right, very early.
And it was a blast. I could tell the former Mormons they had a deeper hole to climb out of than a lot of other former believers.
Yeah.
Like me, I used to be a preacher. I was an evangelical minister for 19 years. I preached the gospel until I changed my mind. And now, as you say, I'm co-president with Annie Laurie Gaylor. We are co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And that is, our national headquarters is in Madison, Wisconsin, where I am now.
Okay.
We started in the mid-1970s, so we're coming up on 50 years. And with two purposes. The first purpose is to keep state and church separate. And the second purpose is to educate the public about the views of those of us who are not believers, whatever we call ourselves. We don't care. We like the word free thinker. It's kind of like an umbrella term to cover agnostic, atheist, secular humanist, doubter, skeptic, whatever. It doesn't matter. One of our jokes is we don't care what we call ourselves. We all disbelieve in the same God, so it doesn't matter. And so with the first purpose, we have a growing legal staff. We have 10 full-time attorneys now. We take legal action. We write legal letters. We take lawsuits. We've had dozens of lawsuits, and we win most of them. And the few that we do lose, we usually lose them on standing, not on the merits, if you know what that means. But and so just today, our legal director, Patrick Elliott, told us that in 2025, we sent out 600 legal letters to schools and mayors and governors for violating state church separation. And out of those 600, we had 200 clear victories, which means we had a legal victory without going to court, which is pretty nice. So, and then on our second purpose of educating the public, we have a newspaper, we have a national radio show, we just started an app, a streaming app called Free Thought TV, which is almost every platform right now, Roku and Samsung, and we're just about ready to go on to Apple too. So you can watch our app on your iPhone with just a lot of content, free thinking. And then we have another show called Secular Spotlight, And we speak. I do a lot of debates. I'll be doing my 142nd public debate in a few
Oh my
weeks in
goodness.
Dallas. And we publish books and all that. And all of that is to help our membership of now about 42,000 members in the country, help them educate about whatever their views or lack of them are, either on state church or on free thought. So I'm looking forward to coming to Salt Lake City. What's the date, Douglas?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what are those dates? And we'll put any information that's relevant to this in the show notes, because I think you're giving some kind of a musical concert, aren't you? You're a
I
very
can do that too,
talented
yeah.
person. Yeah.
Yeah, let me share an image here
Perfect.
that,
There we go.
okay. All right. So yeah, so the date is Saturday, January the 24th. It's going to be at 2 p.m. at the Sandy Library. You can see the address hopefully on your screen right now. There's no charge to attend. Everyone is invited. You don't have to be a frequent or a Freedom from Religion Foundation member. Everyone's invited and encouraged to attend. We have a piano there. You see the little Tunes and Tunes image there. So we're definitely expecting that Dan is going to entertain us with his musical abilities. There's one song in particular that I just absolutely love. It's the Salt Lake City Blues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're not going to do Tunes and Tunes, obviously, because Steve's no longer
But-
with us.
Yeah.
But that was the image that we used when we did our show all over.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's the main event. That's the reason that he's coming here. And then just recently, I was talking with the people with Salt Lake Oasis, who we work very closely with, and they asked me, they said, hey, if Dan's going to be in town that weekend, is he busy on Sunday? Could he maybe come by and stop with us and talk to us? And so I asked Dan, and he jumped right on it. So if you can't come to the Saturday show at the Sandy Library, Salt Lake Oasis is doing, they meet at 11 o'clock at the Parker Theater in South Salt Lake. And so on your screen, you should see the information there. You got two opportunities to see Dan coming up in just a few weeks. I hope everybody will come.
Yep, this is fantastic. We'll make sure that we get this information out in a timely manner so people can put it on their calendar, because, yeah, this is quite an opportunity that you're visiting Salt Lake. So, Doug, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and the Salt Lake chapter?
Okay, can do. All right, so I was raised as a devout Mormon, but then I left the church in my early 20s. And you know how the Mormon leaders, they love to say, oh, those ex-Mormons, they can leave the church, but they can't leave it alone, right?
Yep.
How many times have you heard that?
Oh, all the time, every day.
When I left the church, I did leave the church alone. I not only left the church, but I left Utah as well. And so I went to California, and for several decades, I lived a life that was totally free from religion, and it worked the other way around too. Religion was free from me as well. All the bad things that they said were going to happen to me, none of them happened. Now, you might wonder, well, I'm obviously not leaving religion alone now. I mean, if I'm in the Salt Lake chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, obviously something changed with my point of view. And the thing that changed was after living in California for several decades, I was in a very fortunate position where if I wanted to, I could take early retirement and then spend the rest of my life giving back to society. And I decided to do that. So I came back here to Salt Lake and I became a high school teacher. And I was immediately hit with the things that I had left behind. You know, when I was growing up, there were a lot of things that really tormented me about the church. And so I come back to Salt Lake City and I work with these young people in high school, and I'm seeing that the torment that I experienced as a teenager is nothing compared to what so many of my students were experiencing. We're going to be talking about that in a few minutes, but I mean, especially LGBT. And you know, the statistics about how many LGBT students commit suicide, well, to me, those are not just statistics. To me, those are personal, because some of my students are no longer alive. And I hold religion responsible for that. And we can talk more about that later. Don't want to get too much detail now. So anyway, when I and the other founding members of the Salt Lake chapter, we started up the Salt Lake chapter and we said, what do we want to do? And what do we not want to do? So one thing that we decided we do not want to do is we do not want to attack religion. Now, other chapters of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, they might do things a little differently, but we decided that we want our focus to be on defending the people who are being harmed by religion. And now I recognize that some people are going to look at what we do and they're going to say, well, you're attacking. And, it's a very fuzzy line between defending and attacking. We try not to cross that line. I can't guarantee we don't always cross it. So in a few minutes, we're going to be talking about some of the things that we do here at the local level. But I'll go ahead and end the introduction right there and turn back to you, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you gave us a little window into that. So I like how you said kind of what we are and what we're not, and you guys have talked a little bit about what you are. What would you say if somebody said, what are the common misconceptions, I guess is what I'm trying to say, about your organization? Because some people hear that and right away just go, oh, yeah, no, they're anti-religion, they're attacking churches, they're hostile, they're aggressive. I mean, that's probably something that you guys hear. So how do you address people that come at you kind of with those kind of thoughts about what your organization is? That's open to either of you to answer, or both.
Well, even if you're not directly attacking, just by being a non-believer, they see it as an attack.
Yes.
By
Yes.
saying, I don't believe in God, or I'm an agnostic. Many of them take it personally, like, why are you? And like, if you've ever read Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion,
Yeah.
there's maybe one or two sentences in there which are pretty strong, but most of it is a pretty gentle book. It's not strident, but readers read that and they think, he's just an angry atheist, he's strident. And, it's like when a doctor is trying to cure an illness, would you accuse the doctor of attacking the disease?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What you're trying to do is you're trying to cure the individual. And so if you want to use the word attack, you can, but a healthy criticism and healthy debate should be welcome in a pluralistic society. And so it seems like no matter what we say, Doug, they're going to call it an attack, as gentle as you are in your demeanor. And in our debates that I do, they're always civil, they're always polite, but people come up and say, why are you so angry? And I think what happens is there's a projection, psychological projection. If we say something that makes them angry, they say, well, why are you angry? Like something happens that way. And I'm not opposed to some attacks. I mean, there are some things that should be attacked. And in this debate that I have coming up about the God of the Bible, I'm going to mention how, and you're talking about this too, Doug, how people are harmed or traumatized. An 11-year-old girl in northern Wisconsin died on Easter Sunday because her parents believed the Bible that said, if any of you is sick, let him call for the elders, and the prayer of faith will heal the sick. So they didn't take her to the doctor.
Yeah.
They didn't. She died a horrible disease from easily treatable diabetes, 11 years old. And so I will attack those parents. I will say that is morally wrong. What you did was dangerous and irresponsible and negligent. And so some things do need to be attacked in the spirit of trying to cure the disease. And she's only just one. There are hundreds of cases of people who actually believed the Bible and took it at its word, because there are many verses that says, whatever you ask for in prayer, believing, you shall receive. If you take that seriously, you're a dangerous person and you ought to be attacked. It's not like we're attacking your freedom to believe. So and then ridicule never goes very far, but I think there's a place occasionally for ridicule. Nobody likes to be ridiculed, but in general, most free thinkers in our group, and they're all different, and we don't tell them, we're not like a church. We tell you how you must think.
Right.
And we don't even tell our chapters what they must do. It's all bottom up. They can decide for themselves. Whatever we call ourselves, and we all have different styles. I used to be a preacher, so maybe I'm still a preacher, but it's kind of a good thing there's not that too many preaching atheists. But ultimately, what we want is a world with less violence in it, and more love, and more morality, and more understanding. That's what we really want. And if the way to get there is by appearing to attack others, then we're going to do it that way.
So what kinds of people do you debate? How do you say you listed hundreds of debates? Are you debating scholars or just individuals or pastors, or is it a variety of people?
Yeah, it's everything. Sometimes it's they're scholars or academics. I did 8 debates with Dinesh D'Souza, that author. I've debated a Catholic cardinal, George Pell, in Australia. I debated some imams, a Hindu once. Often it's Christian apologists,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the ones who want to debate. They want to get into it.
Yeah.
So in next month I'll be debating in Dallas one of these Christian apologists on the God of the Bible. And so there's philosophy professors, and also a lot of local ministers, and some rabbis. I've debated a couple of rabbis, and I have to say, I have never invited anyone to a debate, and FFRF has never organized or invited anyone. It's not like we're out there trying to barge into churches, and you know what I mean?
Right, right.
We can live and let live as long as they're not harming people. But we get invited all the time. I get invited all the time, and so I love to go to those things, and it's pretty exciting. Speaking to a live audience while the clock is ticking, making some point, that's really just a fun thing to do. I just love doing that. So, and the topics are, does God exist? Or
Mm-hmm.
how can you be good without God?
Mm-hmm.
Or state-church separation? Or did Jesus rise from the dead? That's the one that I get asked a lot. Is Christianity good for society? There's different topics that come
Right.
up.
Yeah, it sounds like the topics of all the podcasts I do and all the others in the post-Mormon world. We're all wrestling with those same questions. So, I can tell you love it. You're kind of lighting up when you're talking about debating. But I like how you said, angry atheists, because a lot of us in the post-Mormon community, although we're not necessarily all atheists or agnostic, or, we're always called angry. And you're so correct. I just had a conversation like this 2 weeks ago where a relative was telling me that I was angry, and I'm smiling just like this. I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm very comfortable and happy where I am. You're angry. And they were getting angrier and angrier. So I don't know. You guys are good. You keep your cool because you've done this a lot. But for the rest of us, a lot of times it's really hard, to be in those one-on-one situations. And it's often family members, coming from what they call a place of love, trying to like scare you back into religion because they're afraid for you, in the next life. And so it's so frustrating to try to tell people I'm very comfortable with my views where I am now. I am not angry. I say angrily, right? I look angry. So yeah, I hear you. You guys are great.
But then what's the point? I mean,
Yeah.
even if you are angry, what's wrong with anger? Jesus was
Exactly.
angry,
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
anger can sometimes be very useful.
Yep.
And when they say you're angry, they're sort of trying to deflect the conversation away from the
Yes.
actual issue rather than,
Yes.
okay, I'm angry. Now let's talk about these
Mhm.
things, right? Angry or not. But I guess it's a PR thing. You don't want to come across looking ugly and mad and
Yeah,
scare
of course
people
not.
off. But yeah.
Yeah.
One of my friends, when they found out that I was with the Salt Lake chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, they asked me a question, half in jest, but half not. They said, "Does this mean we can no longer be friends?"
Oh.
And so I told them the same thing that I've told many people. I said, if the government were ever to outlaw Mormonism or any other religion, I will stand by your side and I will help you fight for your right to be Mormon or whatever religion. Um, but don't be surprised if maybe during a lull in the fighting, when we're sitting down together catching our breaths, I might turn to you and I might ask you a couple questions designed to make you think about your beliefs, just like people have been asking me for all of my life, asking me questions, trying to get me to think. So yeah, I might have those questions with you, but I will absolutely help you defend your right
Mhm.
to be Mormon or whatever religion you are.
I have a question for you, Rebecca.
Yeah.
What does the word Mormonish mean?
Isn't that a great word? My co-host Landon, who isn't able to be here today, he's on a business trip, came up with that. And it's sort of, he got the idea from a comedian who said, I was raised in the Jewish faith. I'm Jew ish, right? And what it
Huh.
means is while I have stepped away from the organized religion in my late 50s, I was in it for, decades. I'm still Mormon-ish. My culture is there. My society is there. My immediate family is still within the LDS church. My friends are still in the LDS church. There's no way to separate all of that or leave it alone for me because it is who I am. It completely informs everything about me. Although now I'm more on the other side of it. I'm a different kind of Mormon, and I don't like the word anti-Mormon. I don't like the word ex-Mormon. I like post-Mormon, meaning I'm just kind of on the other side of it, but I'm still very involved, and everyone I know is Mormon because, here I am in Utah. So, and I do like to think that from my vantage point on the outside of Mormonism, I can point things out and draw attention to things that people on the inside may not see or may not be in a position to point out. People think they can make change from the inside, but it's very difficult, very difficult. On the outside, people can kind of be that watchdog. They can shine that spotlight. And eventually, we've decided, it's negative PR or embarrassment that eventually kind of moves the needle a little bit with any religion. And they're like, oh, okay, we better stop that because people are noticing. We can do that as a post-Mormon, somebody who's Mormon-ish. So, although I don't know how much longer we'll be able to keep that name because the LDS Church has called in trademarks on all of us that use the word Mormon. So you have Mormon Stories, a podcast that's been going for 20 years, Mormon Discussions, Mormon-ish. The LDS Church is some of the bigger podcasts, not mine yet, trying to say, you can't use that term anymore. And my question is, how do you talk about a group, a religion, if you're not allowed to use the name of the religion? So it's an interesting thing that's happening right now, and we're all kind of keeping an eye on it. But they definitely have sent letters and threatened legal action to stop using that word, Mormon, although they don't use it anymore either. They've tried to distance themselves. So it's
but it seems like Mormonish is a different word. It's not.
I think so too. And I think so too. So we'll see. But it kind of happens when you try to trademark it. Real Housewives of Salt Lake, Heather Gay, if you're familiar with her, called herself Bad Mormon. And she tried to trademark that for merchandise and a book. As soon as you try to officially trademark it, then they're going to come in and say, it's our word. However, they've distanced themselves completely from it. And in a couple of years, the trademark is kind of up. You have to reapply. And there are so many statements they've made that says, don't say the word Mormon. It's a victory for Satan, right? They're trying to use the full name, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is so hard to say. So, but yeah, that's what Mormonish is. And I would say maybe anybody that stepped away from religion could call themselves an ish. From their church, their family's still in it. They were raised in the tradition, they still maybe think that way a little bit, I think it's hard to take yourself completely out of it. So when people say to me, why can't you leave it alone? That's why, because it's who I am, and also my kids, my immediate family, everybody's in, and you're just still a part of it.
That's like Phil Zuckerman. He's a sociologist. He wrote these great books about societies without God. In Denmark, he lived in Denmark for a while and discovered that only 4% of the Danes actually believe in God, which is amazing. Most of the Scandinavian peoples are pretty secular. He said, however, about half of the Danes consider themselves cultural Christians. Mm-hmm. They'll get married in the church. Mm-hmm. They'll, they'll celebrate Christmas. They don't believe any of it, like a lot of American Jews. They pretty much don't believe in their God at all, but they love, one of our speakers who was Jewish said, I love singing the hymns my grandma sang. I don't believe them, but it's just part of our history. Yeah. And he said, for us, for my family, the word Passover means pass the food over. Yeah. It was, it's not like they really believe, but that was so much a part of their, their background, their history, that they could not escape, and they didn't want to escape it. Mm-hmm. They loved their family, so they wanted to connect in some way.
Yep. And that's kind of it. And that's why we do defend ourselves when people say, leave it alone. We're like, why would we leave it alone? I mean, I just got back from a little mini church history tour back to Missouri, Independence, and some of the sites of, the early days of the church. And people were like, why would you go there?
Where the Garden of Eden was? Right?
We went exactly to the Garden of Eden. That's where we went. And we actually shot a little podcast. We're like, we are on the site of a Civil War skirmish, the Cravensville skirmish. And at the very end, we said, and happened to have taken place in the Garden of Eden. So yeah, but I mean, I'm fascinated. That is my history, and it's very close in my family. Polygamy is very close. My, grandparents were polygamous. And so there's no way around it. You have to reconcile it. You have to embrace it. You have to process it and then decide, where you are on that spectrum. And that's just how it is. So I stand by the fact I am a Mormon. I'm on the other side of being a practicing Mormon, but I'm a Mormon. There it is. I feel like I was on a soapbox.
That's interesting.
Or something. Yeah.
Doug wants me to sing that song, the Salt Lake City Blues.
Oh, yeah.
And I will, because that was my first visit to Salt Lake City. And when Steve and I were going to do our show to the Exmos, they called them. I don't know if it still exists or not. It was during General Conference Week.
Oh.
So it was the same week. And we realized that we didn't have a song in our show about Mormonism, because we've been doing it around the country, And so like an hour before the show started, I said, Steve, let's write a song. And so he had two of his buddies who were ex-Mormons come in, and the three of them were feeding me these Mormon lines like a burning in the bosom.
Oh, yes.
And pay, pray, and obey.
Yeah,
and the hand cart across the plain, that kind of stuff. I didn't know any of that stuff, but those, they were, and it turned out, and we did the show, and they were falling in the aisles laughing from it. So you should come and listen to it.
I definitely want to, and I'm going to encourage everybody to hit one of those 2 dates, and we'll put information in the show notes. So, Steve Benson, and he's interesting because he's one of the first, like early on, stepped away and was kind of a watchdog for the church, and I remember being in college, and President Benson was the prophet, and he hadn't been seen for a long time. We'd heard there was ill health, but everybody was assuring all of us, he loves all of you. He's aware of you. He's praying for you. He's thinking about you. He's still receiving revelation. Well, his grandson, Steve Benson, stood up, and this is like something that had not happened before, and said, he's not aware of anything. He's very ill. He has dementia. He's in a hospital. He does not even know what is happening around him. And everyone went, it was shocking. I mean, it wasn't shocking to me. I always had the point of view. I knew it. I was always a little agnostic from being born. I was raised in a very orthodox scenario with my Mormon family. And so I always knew it was so extreme, it couldn't be real. But that caused huge waves for someone to stand up and say, what do you mean that the Lord let a prophet become this infirm? The Lord is not talking to this prophet. So yeah, he's really kind of the OG of somebody standing up and saying, look, it may not be what you think. They're spinning a narrative for you, and there's a reality in there that's not what you think. So I'll always remember him for that someone dared to stand up and say, it's not what you think, pull the curtain back just a little.
Besides that, he also found out that what are the other people called, the other prophets, right?
The apostles.
The apostles? Yeah, some of them were forging his signature on things.
Exactly.
They were putting him in a wheelchair, and from a distance, like he was still there. He wasn't there, but and they would pretend like he was still in charge when he wasn't. He was just a lump of and Steve knew all that. Steve was right in the middle of it. He could see it. So
yeah, and you're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to tell people that. You're supposed to toe the party line. You're supposed to prop him up. He's the prophet, and let everybody believe that he's still cognizant and talking to God. Steve didn't do that. Steve, like I said, pulled back that curtain and said, this is not happening, And it's interesting because since then, I think we do scrutinize our extremely elderly leaders, and we're a little more, I don't know, skeptical maybe of them a little bit, everybody's not kind of falling for it. And we're like, yeah, I think, and it's a terrible system anyway, to have such an elderly person running an organization, because, power vacuums happen with those apostles. Other people are really running it behind the scenes. It's a terrible system. And that's one of the things that we try to kind of shine a spotlight on, be a watchdog for, try to make the organization healthier, because all of our family and friends are part of it, right? So let's try to help it from the outside in. That's kind of our point of view. And
you're all paying a lot of money into that system as well. So you have I would think you have some rights.
Yeah, I would think so too. A lot of us have paid our entire life into the system, and a lot of us recognize that our parents have paid probably a third of their net worth into it, like my parents did. They They donated heavily, not just tithing, but to all of the other funds. It probably did equal about a third of their income for life, and that's a generational kind of a thing, that impacts generations to come. So yeah, all of us have our have our stories with our families, and yeah, it's kind of a love-hate relationship.
Steve
But
said, when I left the church, I got a 20% raise.
yeah, and that's it. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, and especially recently with all the information coming out about how much money the LDS Church actually does have, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. And I would like to say this is something that post-Mormons have done by shining a spotlight on all that and being a watchdog for the extreme minuscule amount that they were actually giving to charity. They have increased their charitable giving because we're watching. There's even a group within the LDS Church called the Widow's Mite. And the LDS Church itself will not transparently put out any documents or anything like that, or let anybody know about their finances. But as you know, there are things they must file tax-wise. This group, and it's made up of active members, nuanced members, post members, smart, super smart financial people. They scrutinize all these things and they put out information about what the church's, finances actually are. And I would like to say that this has shamed them into upping their actual charitable giving, into at least $1 billion. So I pat ourselves on the back for doing that, because without shining that spotlight, I don't think that ever would have happened. It was very under the radar for hundreds of years.
Yeah, there are lots of areas where people who've left the church have worked together with people who are in the church to enact change. So I'd like to maybe take the direction, change the direction just a little bit. I'd like to mention a few of the things where people are being harmed, and some of the things that we in the Salt Lake chapter of the FFRF are doing. And I'd like to put out a call to other post-Mormons and other people who are nuanced Mormons to see if maybe we can enact some of those changes. So if you don't mind, I'd like to maybe share my screen here.
Oh, yes. Everybody on Mormonish knows that I love people that bring slides to the show. It's my favorite thing when I don't have to make them myself and somebody else brings them. So let's do it for sure.
Okay.
So while you're bringing that up, I have a question. How would one join the FFRF, the chapter in Salt Lake? I mean, I don't even know that information. What does it take to join or be a part? Because I know people are going to be asking this question as we're watching.
Well, you need to become a member of the national organization.
Okay.
I'll let Dan talk about how to do that. But then once you're a member of the national organization, you're automatically in just to the Salt Lake chapter. Just send us an email and you're in. So Dan, how do they join the national organization?
So you can do it online or in the mail. It's $40 a year, which compared to Mormon tithing is hardly anything.
A drop in the bucket. Are you kidding?
And of course, a lot of members pay more. Some of them are really generous. Some of them really are just paying their widow's mite. Yeah. And chapters, a lot of our chapters consist of people who attend who are not necessarily members. So they're welcome, but when it comes to voting, when it comes to being an official part of the chapter, you have to be a member of the national group, right? Okay. So, and chapters encourage visitors to join the national as well. So, but you can also join as we have a life membership of $1,000, and we have a lot of people who do that. And we have an afterlife membership. It's a joke. And then we have also a wall of immortals, people who have put us in their wills. So that also in our building, you can see that. So it's easy to join. You can go online at ffrf.org. You can just do it right there, or you can call us up on the phone. The phone number's there, or you can mail it in as well.
Oh, that's great. And then I'm assuming that you put information out, newsletters, things like that about what you guys are doing and what's happening, and people can stay informed and get involved, like a chapter like Salt Lake. That's where I would be. Yeah. So yeah, this is great. All right, look at your slides. Fantastic.
So yeah, what you're seeing right here is the Salt Lake chapter's website. Okay, so so Dan just said you can go to ffrf.org, but if you go to ffrfslc.org, then you'll come to our website that has lots of information on it. I'm not going to go through it, but one thing the call to action here, this is kind of what I was hoping to talk about tonight. One thing that we've done at the Salt Lake chapter is we've identified 12 issues where we think people in Utah are being harmed by religion, and we would like our members and anyone else who's interested to take a look at these issues and pick one or two that you think are especially meaningful to you, and then maybe contact your elected officials or talk to your friends and neighbors. We even put a link here where if you don't know who your elected officials are, you can click on this link right here.
Oh, that's
and
great.
it'll tell you who they are. Okay. So right here you're seeing what we have identified as our dirty dozen list. These are the 12 issues where we think Mormons are being, or Utahns are being harmed. Now, if we were to talk in detail about all 12 of these, then it would take 4 hours to do. And
At
this
least.
is not the Mormon, this is the Mormon-ish podcast, not the Mormon Stories
No,
podcast.
Mormon stories, you might get up to that 6 hour limit. But this list itself is excellent. And I hope people maybe will pause on this and just kind of look through it and then actually even go to this website and click on it. Because
Yeah.
as I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, I can think of an example of that. Oh, yeah, there was that issue. So yeah, you're hitting the nail right on the
Yeah.
head here, especially here in Utah with this list.
Yeah. And so I'm just going to very briefly talk about each of the 12 very briefly, and then I'll ask you if are there any that you want to go into more depth on. The book ban issue is one that's especially timely in light of what happened yesterday, and then that new thing that just happened today. So yesterday, Utah, we moved up to the top of a list that you do not want to be at the top of, or even on at all, and that's book bans. So yesterday, Utah banned 3 more books, and now we have more books banned statewide than any other state. And I had somebody once tell me, well, banning books is not a religious issue. I mean, the books are obscene, so of course they need to be banned. Well, if this is an issue we choose to talk about, I can talk a lot about it. It is definitely not a matter of banning obscene books. These books are being banned for religious reasons. And if we don't have time to talk about it, you can see there's a lot of links here people can click on. LGBTQ oppression is something that's especially relevant to me. As I mentioned earlier, people that I know and care about are dead because of this. And you can see we have a lot of little cartoons on here. So Steve Benson was an editorial cartoonist that Dan knows. Well, Pat Bagley is kind of Utah's cartoonist laureate, if you want to call it. And he's got some really, really good things published that really, you can, many a truth is said in jest. And so I like these here. Abortion, of course, is always an issue. Now, the LGBTQ issue and the abortion issue, those are 2 hot points that the religious extremists love to use to try and get religious abstainers and religious believers to fight. The extremists are trying to use the divide and conquer strategy, so that we'll be so busy fighting each other that we don't join up to oppose them, which is what we need to do. The abortion, there are many religious moderates who support a woman's right to choose. And so those are things that I think everybody needs to be aware of. Gerrymandering is something that happens in Utah a lot.
Yeah.
And again, they say to me, well, that's not really a religious issue. Yeah, actually it is. If you read what we have on our website, or if we have time to talk about it later, these kinds of things are being done because the politicians, they think that they are God's warriors and they're fighting Satan's emissaries. And when you're fighting a holy battle, dirty tricks aren't dirty. Anything goes. So that's one of the issues on our list here. School vouchers, another issue. Taxpayer money is being sent to religious schools, and homeschoolers are using taxpayer money to buy curriculum materials that are religious in nature, that deny science. Women's rights, of course, a key issue, especially here in Utah.
Yeah.
God in schools. People think, the schools aren't promoting God, but there are some things going on that many people aren't aware of that we could talk about if we had time. And if we don't have time, it's all on our website here. Death with dignity is an important one to me. A lot of the legislators who are opposing the a person's right to choose death with dignity, the reasons they're giving for opposing it are religious in nature. They're saying only God can
Mhm.
decide when we die. But there's a lot of people who are religious moderates who are saying, no, God is not that kind of a God. And so, again, we're hoping that religious abstainers and religious moderates will get together. Welfare spending is something that you might again say, well, that's not a religious issue, but there's some funny shenanigans going on in Utah that we could talk about. But I don't want to spend the whole time on this. So if we don't have time to talk about, there's stuff on the website here where $75 million over the course of a decade was not spent that would have been because of the church's involvement together with the Utah state. School spending, another issue where people say, "Oh, that's not a religious issue." But yeah, I can tell you stories. It is very definitely tied to religion. We're almost done here. Polygamy.
Yeah.
Polygamy was decriminalized in Utah recently, and people say, "Oh, okay, it's not really an issue anymore." But child brides are still being coerced into marrying creepy old guys who already have lots of wives. One of my students here in Salt Lake City uh, was affected by this. She just quit coming to school one day. So so these and then okay, finally, church influence on government here. This one, let me just pull up this cartoon again. This is another Pat Bagley cartoon. This is one of his very first ones made decades ago that I just love. You can see down here that the church official up in the top levels of the church office building. He's calling his secretary and saying, "Sister Finchley, I'm tired of all these news stories accusing the church of calling all the shots in Utah. Have the legislature pass a resolution denying it."
Hmm.
I love that. And a lot of people say, "Oh,
Yep.
that's not really going on. That's
Oh gosh.
exaggeration." But if you click on these links on our website here, you'll find out that, yeah, it, it is going on. So that's a very, very quick summary of the what we call the Dirty Dozen. And if you think any of those would be of interest to your listeners, we could talk in more detail about them.
Kind of dig in. I think so too. And I'm curious to ask Dan, you mentioned sending out all those letters. Is that your first step when, I mean, issues exactly what you just talked about, Doug? You see things, you're made aware of things, and you send out kind of a shot across the bow. Does it always end up in legal action, or is sometime it just awareness from a letter? I mean, how does that work when it comes to these kinds of issues and more?
Well, usually if you are going to take legal action and go to court, you first want to have exhausted all your normal
Mm,
legal remedies. If you see if the school's doing something you don't like, you don't just go right to court. You
exactly.
ask the principal or you ask the teacher or you go ahead and you document that, right? So and sometimes just by doing that you can correct an abuse. So the legal letters that we send out are informing, they're educational. And we don't threaten any legal action. We simply point out, look, here's what the law
Mm,
says. This is what you're doing. At least it's to our knowledge, we've received a complaint from families in your school or voters in your district, and we would like an assurance that you're going to stop this or correct it. Sometimes they do. And about a third of the time, we call it a victory. We'll stop an abuse because they either realize that it was wrong, and sometimes the like the superintendent of the school district doesn't even know that it's wrong,
mhm.
and they'll thank us for telling them, by the way, you can't be doing this because you're violating the rights of the secular students who
Yeah.
have the right to be free from religion being pushed on them. And families of a different faith from the majority have a right to be free in the public school. So writing a letter is a good first step. Sometimes, if they dig in and they refuse, then we might have to follow up. We often follow up with another letter, and if we can get all the ducks in a row, because you can't just go to court. There's all these,
Right.
you have to have a good plaintiff with standing, which shows injury. They're going to stay in the city for a while, and also it depends if you're in federal court or state court, what kind of case you're taking. So then you can sue, and we are able to sue. And there were some school districts like in Georgia that were always ignoring our letters. It turns out that in the entire state of Georgia, all of the school districts were represented by the same legal firm. And so they were saying, they're just complaining, just ignore them. So they ignored us and ignored us. So we had to take legal action to show them that we meant business. So we decided, okay, we're going to sue in this district here. We actually did sue, and we actually did win. And now they can't say we don't have legal teeth because there's a good argument there. So every case is different. We usually go into federal court, but sometimes into state court. And the plaintiffs are different. But yes, the letters are really important as a good first step. And it's great when it's the only step you need. I mean,
Yeah.
because lawsuits are expensive and they're time consuming, and it's you can't sue every single complaint. So the letters are important.
Rebecca, your viewers might be interested in knowing what kind of letters have been sent to Utah into entities.
Yes. Yes.
And again,
absolutely.
on our website, we have a page devoted just to that. This is a page on our website where if you scroll down here, you can see all sorts of letters that the FFRF lawyers have sent to people here in Utah. And if you click on the links here, it'll actually show you the actual letter. Like, I mean, just in December, we sent a letter to the Utah School Board because one of the board members had done something unconstitutional. I don't want to go into too much detail here because we don't have a lot of time. Alpine School District, City of Provo, another one for Alpine, Governor Cox, Riverton City. I mean, you can just go down the list here. Alpine School District appears on the list many times.
Yeah, I bet. That's my school district. That's where I raise my kids. I know all about that.
City of Orem Canyons. I mean, lots and lots and lots of letters here. So yeah, FFRF is very active here in Utah, doing exactly the kind of things that Dan just talked about.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I can see that. So, and sometimes that's all it takes. And then eventually maybe it escalates to something else, but attention is drawn. I remember, gosh, I guess it was about a month ago where in the paper it says something about how a teacher had shown a video about God to the class, or it had a huge religious component to it, and parents called and parents said that, that's not something that my kids need to see in school. And yeah, I think that definitely there was a reprimand or an apology, because they drew attention to it. And I'm sure the teacher was well-meaning and wasn't thinking clearly, but had shown something that was extremely religious in nature, that didn't have any point in the class. Yeah.
Speaking of which, I mean, this is the letter that was sent out as a result of the thing that you just mentioned.
There you go. That's it. You've got it right there. Yeah. Do you want to kind of paraphrase what you guys said, how you drew attention?
Well, it just pointed out what happened and included a link to the video and explained how it's improper to impose religious beliefs on people like this. And students feel extremely uncomfortable and upset if they're feeling depressed and this school authority is telling them, well, the reason you're feeling depressed is because you're not working hard.
Yeah.
If you would work harder like God intended, then you wouldn't feel so depressed. Well, that is exactly the kind of harm that I'm talking about that's happening to students, and that's got to stop. And that's what we do is we look out for those kinds of things, and we contact the FFRF lawyers, and they're really good. They get right on it. I mean, this is not even 1 month old, this letter you're looking at here.
And sometimes we'll hear from a student who says they're going to pray at my graduation next Tuesday.
Yeah.
We can get a letter out that day, right? And if you notice that letter that Doug just showed you, the second paragraph said a concerned parent has contacted us. And the advantage of this is that if you're a parent or a family with kids in the school, you may not want to be seen as the person complaining. You may not want to be the one who's complaining about the Bibles or the teachers. So we can write a letter on their behalf without identifying who they are. They don't even have to become plaintiffs in a lawsuit if they don't. As long as there's a legitimate complaint, we have every right to send a letter saying, look, this is a violation of the law and we're bringing it to your attention. And then sometimes the families are glad. They don't want the school to know who was the complaining family. If they are brave enough, and this is great if they are, to identify themselves at least to the courts, then we would show real injury. And this letter's on record. And if we do take a lawsuit, I'm not saying we would here, but if we did, we could show the court, look, we took this step, we took this action, they refused, and so there's legal basis for continuing injury and all of that. And the lawyers put it all in legalese. And you probably saw in that letter also the legal precedent that was cited. Here's what the law says, and here's why. And we have template letters depending on what state or what federal district it is, and we can cite, if there were any cases coming out of Utah, we could cite those cases as well. So our attorneys, they not only love what they do, but they're really good at what they do, and they're fast.
Yeah, and you said you have 10?
There are 10, and there's
wow.
also some legal fellows, and we also have legal interns, and then we have legal staff. So it's more than just the 10 attorneys, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I see what you guys are doing here. I'm getting it. So do you want to talk a little, I think it's relevant to talk about what just happened, the banned books. Doug, do you want to tell us, how you guys are addressing that here in Salt Lake, and maybe a little bit about what happened? Because I think it's a headline over the last couple of days. I think people are kind of looking at that and wondering what's happening.
Yeah, that one's especially timely to talk about here. Let me just go to the right page here. While I'm doing that, let me talk. So just yesterday, so this will be January the 5th. I realize that this isn't going to be broadcast till later, but for us, it's yesterday. Utah banned 10 books. Utah banned 3 more books, which put it up to 22 books that are banned statewide. And give me just a sec here to share my screen. Okay, so in the book ban here, you can see that Utah has one of the most restrictive book bans in the country. And there are many school districts that ban lots of books, but in Utah, the legislators have passed a law that says that even if only 3 school districts ban a book, 3 out of the 41 school districts, if only 3 ban it and the other 38 do not want the book banned, well, too bad. It gets banned statewide. So local administrators are being overruled, local educators being overruled, parents like me are being overruled. Very few people are exerting control over a great many people. And I mentioned earlier, I was talking with somebody once, and I said that I think these book bans are religious in nature. And they said, no, they're not. They're being banned because the books are obscene. And that's absolutely not the case. I went and I purchased one of the books that had been banned by Utah. And Rebecca, you might know it. It's by Judy Blume. It's called Forever.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You
That
read
was
it?
the book that we passed around when I was in high school. Absolutely. Kind of hid under our pillow. It had some, themes about sexuality and stuff, but, my parents never had the talk with me. So to me, that book was a lifesaver. I actually figured some stuff out from reading it. So I love Judy Blume.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can understand why some religious extremists would be upset, because it does talk about a young couple who's deeply in love, and they make the conscious decision to have sex. And I can easily imagine how a religious person would immediately slam the book shut and throw it in the fire. But if they would keep reading, they would find out that the book talks about the consequences of the choice that this young couple made, and the difficulties they went through and how they dealt with it. And these are positive messages. These are the kinds of things that I want my children and my grandchildren to read. But the state of Utah says, no, you cannot read it. And then here's the other thing. Oops, not that one. Okay, let's go back to, okay. So what you're seeing here, this is something that just happened today. This is an article from the Salt Lake Tribune today saying that as a result of yesterday's action in Utah, some authors are now suing the state. And the thing that is most important to me is that some Utah students are joining in here. And there's one thing from the article here that I think is really important for people to read. So let me just highlight this right here. Okay. So joining the authors of plaintiffs are two unidentified Utah high schoolers, including one who says she was sexually assaulted during her freshman year. That student sought out What Girls Are Made Of at school as a way to help her cope with her trauma, but only to realize that that book had been banned. So we keep on reading here, and it says she's now robbed of perspectives and narratives that would allow her to process and learn from her experiences rather than being unprepared to encounter these in adult life. I mean, this is real harm that is happening, and it is real timely. So these are the kinds of things that we at the FFRF, at least at the Salt Lake chapter, we're looking out for these kinds of things. And so Dan, as soon as we finish recording this, I'll send you a link to this article, and I'm hoping you'll forward it to the lawyers, and maybe FFRF can get involved. I think this is exactly the kind of thing that FFRF does.
So there's more than one way to be involved legally. Even if you're not a direct party to a lawsuit, you can ask to write a friend of the court brief, and those are called amicus briefs. And we've written hundreds of those. It's for somebody else's case, but we're weighing in on it. We can do that. Sometimes you can intervene. You can ask the court to intervene, even as an intervening party. But or else our attorneys can simply be there as legal support for their attorneys if they want. They can brainstorm together. So there's a lot of ways that attorneys work together locally and nationally on this.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely fascinating. I think a lot of people don't really understand that when they see something, that there is an organization, there are people, there's recourse. You don't have to just kind of fume about it. You can go, look, I can raise awareness. I can, take steps. Sorry, my dog is sneezing on the ground. So no. And like you said, Doug, it seems like these issues, if you really pay attention, happen maybe even almost weekly if you're really looking at what's happening. Like, especially in Utah, one of your dirty dozen was, of course, the LGBTQ community, which I think we're all very aware of, and trying to shine a spotlight on that. And I should talk a little bit about that. What have you seen? What steps have been taken? What is the involvement of the chapter here?
Okay, so first off, I just want to mention why it's important to me is because, as I said before, I spent many years as a high school teacher, and I came to know and care deeply about so many young people who've been so badly hurt. And one of my students, someone who I was especially close with, and he would come into my room during lunchtime because he was really interested in physics, and which is what I taught. So he'd come into my room during lunchtime, would talk about physics, but he would also talk about the pressures that he felt in a society that just refused to accept him for who he was, and it just troubled him so deeply. And not long afterwards, I found out that he's dead, and I don't want to go into all the details there, but and so many of my other students who are LGBT, they didn't go to the extremes of committing suicide, but just when they talk about the trauma they feel in a society that will not accept them, and in Utah it's especially bad because the church leaders have taught for so long that it's such an abominable sin. So to me, this is an area where people are being severely harmed. And now I want to make it clear that the vast majority of my Mormon and other religious friends are wonderful, kind people who would never knowingly hurt somebody. And so when I talk to them about this issue, they minimize it because they don't see the harm that's being done. People tend to live in a bubble, and especially here in Utah. And so many people, they don't think that it's a problem, But and so one thing that we at the Salt Lake chapter of the FFRF do is we want to educate people about the harm that's being done, because I believe that these good, kind LDS people and other religions too. I have many friends from other religions. I believe that these people would stand up and take action if they knew how much harm was being done.
If they
I think they would,
understood.
if they understood. They would go to their church leaders and they would say, "Hey, this has got to change." And this isn't just wishful thinking, I'm convinced, because I know this has happened before. I mean, Rebecca, you know about the ban of the blacks, the priesthood ban, and a lot of people think that what happened was that Spencer W. Kimball was just in the temple one day, and the heavens opened up and God told
Yeah.
him to change it.
No.
Well,
Pressure.
I have
Again, pressure from outside and
Yeah,
embarrassment and bad
exactly.
PR. That is the only thing that works.
Yeah, I had a meeting with a general authority just a few months after the lifting of the ban was announced. So I met with this general authority and I asked him point blank, because he was in the temple with the rest of the senior brethren when they made the decision. And I asked him point blank, I said, "Can you describe to me what happened? Were there any heavenly visitors or what?" And he admitted that what happened was that they all got together there in the temple and they all discussed it. They prayed about it, and then they took a vote, and that was it. And
Yeah. And what they don't say is that he had to get rid of two of the apostles. One was sick, one was sent away because they were the most racist and they never would have gone along with it. I mean, it was years in the making as far as political maneuvering and lobbying. Yeah. But most people just think, oh, that is, yeah. If you haven't read that, everybody, Matthew Harris, this tells you how the sausage is made, and you will learn a lot right there. Yep. We've read that in our book club, and we've had Matt on. And Mormon Stories has done I think 25-part series on almost every single chapter. This tells you the involvement, church and state. It tells you all of it.
And the point that I want your viewers to take away is that we can enact change.
Right.
Post-Mormons and nuanced Mormons working together, applying pressure in the right place. We have successfully made change in the past, and we can successfully make changes in the future. And, who knows, if we keep at it, the church might someday allow same-sex couples to have the same rights that other people have.
Oh, I think they have to. I think they will have to, because again, just the tide of public opinion will turn, and they're going to have to do that. And everybody inside the church will have to get on board, and it'll probably be just like the lifting of the priesthood ban. I was old enough, I was 12 when that happened. And I remember my dad sustaining it in conference, and, my dad saying, "Oh, thank goodness." I'm like, well, if everyone said, thank goodness, why weren't they trying to make a change from the ground up all this time? But that's not how religion works in a lot of cases. So yeah, it's extremely political, but, and I do like to think that as post-Mormons, we do that. I've been reporting, like a pit bull on temple building in the LDS church, focusing on certain cities where there were abuses, total problems, church and state, and making sure everybody knew all the time about it. And I like to think that all of us that did this, we did change the way that they go about, temple building and what they're doing, and respecting communities and zoning and things like that. So it does make a difference to speak out, although you take a lot of heat. I'm sure you know that, Dan. You take a lot of heat, right? A lot.
Yeah.
It's easy to say, those angry, evil agnostics or atheists or anti-religion. Yeah.
But if you're taking heat, that means you're doing something. You're being noticed. It means they're paying attention. So, well, I have a question for you guys. Demographically, our country is becoming less and less religious. Churches are closing, consolidating. I just read a story that in 2026, 15,000 churches in America are going to close, out of, I don't know how many, 500,000 or so. What's happening in the Mormon church? Is membership growing or shrinking, or what's happening there?
It depends on who you ask. And we report on this all the time, again, without actually putting out membership statistics, which they keep down to the iota. I mean, they track, they count every Sunday, they know, but they're not going to say. So it leaves the rest of us to try to kind of extrapolate what's going on. There's a website called Return and Report, where anybody who happens to find themselves in a Mormon ward can kind of count up on their own. And that and other sources tell us it's about 20% attendance. And other signs, there's another site called Mormon Shrivel, that shows Mormon churches are being sold off. And the membership is definitely shrinking. Now it is growing in Africa. They are really putting all their eggs in the basket of Africa, as are many Christian denominations, right? And so they're building temples like crazy over there. But Europe, shrunk down to almost nothing. South America, that used to be what Africa is now to the church, also declining. But they're never going to say that or show that. The rest of us have to kind of just get this information from other sources. Now, they claim about 17.5 million members, but we've crunched data from all kinds of different sources. Again, they know, but they won't say, but they do reveal some things. And we think that's closer to 4 million, honestly, globally, which is incredible when you consider its wealth. We're talking about just the wealthiest church, but very small membership. And it's just difficult. They have these areas. And when I say that they're growing in Africa, so are every Christian denomination. And the LDS church is growing, very small compared to a lot of these other, I think there's like 2 million Catholics and, Protestants, it's much larger. But for LDS people, they're seeing these mass baptisms they haven't seen before. And I do feel that to attract new members, the LDS church is trying to appear more mainstream Christian. We talk about this all the time. Crosses are now okay. Used to be absolutely forbidden. Hymns where you clap, good old gospel music, now okay. Used to not be that way. All kinds of things, celebrating Good Friday. Mormons did not do that. They are really trying to appear more mainstream Christian. In the past, it was only the King James Version of the Bible that Mormons could read. If you brought another version of the Bible to church, you couldn't use it. You couldn't teach from it. Just 2 weeks ago, they said, you know what? You can read whatever kind you want. The conversational, the easier to understand. Again, they're just trying to appeal, especially to younger people, because they know, like all religion, like you just described, rats off a ship, right? So it's interesting to watch.
You have to be so careful with the numbers they give you and take them with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
I was in a meeting not too long ago where the speaker was the leader of the Salt Lake chapter of the Satanic Temple.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys about what you think of that. Yes, go ahead.
It was a very interesting meeting, and he was telling that when he left the Mormon Church, he's sent in a request to have his name removed from the rolls, and they did the rigmarole that they do. They make you jump through all sorts of hoops.
Yep. Notarization. I don't know if you know that, Dan, but to leave the LDS Church, you have to get a notarized document.
So he he looked at all those hoops and he said, forget it, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So you should know that according to the Mormon Church records, the leader of the Salt Lake chapter of the Satanic Temple is technically a Mormon.
Yeah, no, and that is another thing, Dan, that's interesting is, once you're baptized, you have a membership record, right? They track you, your address, what you're doing in the church, and you have to formally take, it's called taking your name off the rolls of the church. You have to formally do it. Most people don't. They don't even know. Maybe they were baptized when they were little. Your name is still counted in those membership numbers. And if they don't hear from you or know where you are, your name is on that record until you are 110 years old. That's when it's finally purged off the record. So that's why I say they can claim 17.5 million, but many of those people don't even really realize they're on the records. They were very briefly in the church. My name is still on the record. I'm still considered a member of the church just because people have various reasons that they don't take their name off. One of the big reasons is when you do, your family members can find out. When you go in to talk to your bishop or leader for a tithing declaration, meaning they check how much money you paid. And if you paid enough, they'll pull up your record and it could show your elderly parents that your name isn't there. and they'd go, well, where's the name of my daughter? And they would know then that, the person had taken their name off. So a lot of people, because they don't want to deal with that, they don't want, family members to realize what's going on. They don't want to hurt family. They just leave their name on the record. So you're absolutely right, Doug. They used to make statistical reports from the pulpit at General Conference when the news was good. But the point is they don't anymore because the news isn't good. Another trick that they're doing, which is really interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with how everything's divided, Dan. You have a stake, which is made up of wards, which is a group of maybe, supposedly 500 people. They've made the wards smaller. They've shrunk those. They've put more in a stake. So they're able to say, look, our stakes are growing. But all they've really done, it's kind of like a little shell game. And the people that suffer are the actual members, because the little groups they're put in aren't sustainable as far as a church family. Not enough kids to make it viable. People overworked in the different callings that they have. So they're not really thinking about the people. They're thinking about what looks good on paper. So it is pretty interesting. But again, it's a trend nationally. Like you said, it's a trend globally, I think. And interestingly, women are stepping more away from religion than men. It used to be the women that held it all down, right? The mother in the home. Women, which I think care maybe more about the LGBTQ issues, about women's issues, about how women are treated in religion. I think once you lose the women, it's very hard to maintain the families. So I don't know if you guys have seen that trend, but it's certainly happening in Mormonism for the first time ever. More women are leaving than men.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
kind of
women are
fascinating.
smart, so.
That's it exactly.
By the way, we should point out that the Satanic Temple actually doesn't believe in Satan.
Exactly.
It's a name,
Yes.
right? They don't believe in Satan
No.
or anything supernatural,
Exactly.
but they're using the name for PR reasons. And
Yep.
if you look at their principles, they're just good, solid, loving, ethical, moral
Yep.
principles is what they're.
Yep.
But since they have the word satanic in it, they've been very useful. In fact, we'll make a complaint in some school about they're handing out Bibles in the school. So we'll say, well, we want to put our FFRF literature there.
Mm-hmm.
And the school says, well, can we do that? But when the Satanic Temple says, we want to put our literature there, they shut
Yep.
down the whole thing,
Exactly.
right? Because of that Satan. So legally, they have a really good strategy.
Yeah.
I don't know how consistent they are around the country, but in some cases, they have been very useful in that way.
Yeah, well, it drives home the point, doesn't it? I remember covering a lot of stories from Texas where they said, we're going to allow ministers into like junior highs to help students, right? And that sounds like a great idea. But who are these ministers? What church do they represent? Why do they get access to our students? Obviously, some of the parents were really upset. Other parents were like, no, this is great. The kids need someone to talk to. And the Satanic Temple there said, perfect. We're going to sign up our ministers to come into your schools. And the parents were like, whoa. And they're like, we're a religion. We have ministers. We have a right to bring them in. And that kind of brought home the idea, yeah, if we let this Christian minister in, we're going to have to let this satanic, and like you say, does not believe in Satan, secular organization, but it is a religion, so no, I love it. Or there'll be like, a 10 Commandments display in a city hall or something, and they'll get in there and say, well, we want to put up a display to, what we value. We want to put our candles up and our goat head, that's not who they are, but it makes the point. It drives it home. There's nothing like that. So yeah,
We
if you
do
guys
that
want to
too.
read something, read their tenets, read their
Yeah.
10 Commandments, and you will not disagree with a single one of them because they're just about being a good human being.
Yeah. We do the same thing. We have some equal time holiday displays, secular. We have a secular nativity scene,
Oh, interesting.
and in many cases, the city or the state has to take it because it's a public forum, right?
Yeah.
Although in Texas, the governor of Texas saw our display next to the nativity scene, and he called it indecent and blasphemous, and he ordered our display taken down.
Oh, okay.
And so that we sued him under free speech, and we won. It took 8 years going through the courts because they kept weaseling around.
Yeah.
But we sued the governor of Texas for violating our rights, and since then they've decided, well, they're going to shut down the whole thing, which is fine with us. We don't think our stuff should be there either.
Right.
But if they're going to have religion, they should allow all points of view.
Yep. And that's it. that's the bottom line right there. So, and it takes somebody like your organization or, the Church of Satan to just make people realize
The Satanic Temple.
the
It's different
Satanic
from the
Temple.
Church of
That's right.
Satan.
Yeah, I know. I can't think of the name of
Yeah.
it, but yep. No, it's an important part, and it's similar to what we do on the post-Mormon side, where we're just trying to kind of raise awareness and shine a spotlight and be a little bit of a watchdog and be able to do some things from the outside in because we care about people, like you guys care about people, and you care about the rights of people, and you care about, cities and towns and people in them. And so, yeah, it's very important. Well, this has been really, really interesting. I'm so glad that we had a chance to talk. Do either of you have any kind of final thing that you'd like to say? We really enjoyed this conversation, and I know our viewers have too. And I'm guessing a lot of them are going to be checking out your website and probably even joining because it's right up all of our alley.
Well, let me start off there. If there's one thing that your viewers take away from this podcast, I mentioned it ago, but it's worth repeating. It's that I firmly believe that religious people and non-religious people working together is crucially important, especially now with the rise of Christian nationalism.
Yes.
We cannot let them use their divide and conquer strategy. We cannot fight each other. We need to work together to enact change to stop the harms that the Christian nationalists are doing nationwide and in Utah with the things we mentioned. We can enact change, but we gotta cooperate in order to do it. We can't fight.
Yep. That's
At
great.
our national convention this year, James Obergefell will be one of the speakers. If you remember the Obergefell decision, which legalized same-sex marriage. So Obergefell has agreed to come and talk, and he's by the way, he's a non-believer. As also, Ron Reagan will be speaking at our convention. You might have seen our ad with Ron Reagan on TV. It's going to be airing. Well, I guess on Rachel, we're looking at Rachel Maddow again, MSNBC. But you might have seen the ad where he says, "I'm Ron Reagan, not afraid of burning in hell." And boy, we get the letters and phone calls from people, but a lot of supportive. A lot of people are glad to hear about us. So we do have a national convention, and this year it'll be in Milwaukee. We move it around. Maybe someday we'll come to Salt Lake City for a convention.
That would be fascinating. That would be fascinating. I bet there would be quite a bit of interest. So, I mean, how large is the chapter here, Doug, compared to other places? Like we talk about, Utah Church and State is hand in glove. It's really right there,
Well, there are about 250 well, not necessarily in the chapter. I mean,
right.
In the organization, the National Freedom from Religion
Right.
Foundation, there are about 250 members in the state of Utah. And now only a small fraction of those have actually reached out and said we want to join the local chapter. So we're hoping that Dan's visit here later this month is going to spur some of these people to come out of the woodwork and sign up as local chapter members.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And again, we'll get the information for sure, and we'll put it in the show notes so that everybody can come out and see Dan and hear your amazing music. You're quite the musician, as I understand. So I think this will be great. So, well, thank you guys for making time tonight. When we put these episodes out, we have a live chat. So I'll make sure you guys have links to that in case you even want to jump on, because I know that people are going to be talking about this and, asking questions or sharing information if they're already a part of it or know something about it. So, but yeah, you guys do really important work. Let's say that, right? Do you have a chapter in every single state, or
No,
it's kind of regional in some places? So it just kind of depends.
we're not like a church denomination where we're trying to plant chapters everywhere.
Yeah.
But we accommodate people like Doug and others who bottom up wish, because we're not going to control it from our office, but what do we have, 25 now? Or I think there's 25 or 26 chapters.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'll be in Olympia, Washington next week. They're going to start up a new chapter there. So, and then each chapter can decide what it wants to be. Some of them are very activist. Some of them are just very social. They get together and, some of them take legal action. They all have different depending on what they are,
Right.
they form a membership around those local needs. So
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I can see how a Utah chapter would be facing different challenges and have different issues
yeah,
come up than, like you said, suppose Olympia, Washington. So
It
I think
actually
that's
amazed
excellent.
me that it took so long. I mean, if ever there's a state that needs a chapter, it's Utah. And I don't know how we went so long before we finally got one. But me and a couple other people, we looked at each other almost exactly 1 year ago now, and we said, "Boy, we have got to get one going in Utah."
Yeah. And here you are, and this is great.
Here we
And
are.
I think this will raise at least some awareness of it. So, and I like your shirt. There it is. Freedom from religion. Yep. It's got the shirt. That's it. Do you wear that around, like around town, and have people ask about it?
I do sometimes, yeah. Mostly I wear it to chapter events, but yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes I'll wear, and sometimes people come up to me, like
Oh,
this, but usually the reception is very good.
yeah. Or at least they ask. They're like, what is that exactly? What does that mean? And then you can kind of tell them, and which I think is important. And I'm glad we had this conversation tonight because like I said, I think some people not only don't know what you are, but they also don't know what you aren't, right? And that's just as important. So I hope that we help to shine a spotlight. I've used that term a lot tonight, but that is what we're trying to do on this. So, well, thank you guys. This has been great. And I hope everybody's commenting in the chat. We would love to hear what you guys think. If you've heard of Freedom from Religion Foundation before, or, just any of your thoughts about how important this is, or, ways that you might possibly want to get involved. So please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when the new episodes come out, you can hit that notification bell. You can always go to our show notes and make a donation to Mormonish Podcast. We are a nonprofit and we absolutely function on donations, and we appreciate so much all of you that do. So you can always find a link there in the show notes. And again, we'd like to thank Doug for putting this all together, and we'd like to thank Dan for taking the time. And we're really excited that you're coming to town, and I hope we get the chance to meet you in person. That would be really fun. So I think that would be
and
great.
Thanks for having us.
a real
All right.
pleasure to know you too, Rebecca. Thank you.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time on Mormonish. Bye bye.